"Can I help in the kitchen in exchange for something to eat?" asked a small, helpless figure. What the renowned magnate did next left everyone speechless. The atmosphere of the prestigious restaurant, Heavenly Flavors, exuded a symphony of aromas from fine spices and delicate oils. Shimmering chandeliers cast an amber light on polished ebony tables, where gentlemen in immaculate designer suits whispered about the most exquisite dishes, and ladies, adorned with sparkling jewels, sipped sparkling water. Waiters, with their discreet elegance, glided through the hall, carrying platters that seemed to float. But suddenly, the imposing wooden door creaked open. A murmur spread like a wave through the luxurious hall as a fragile silhouette emerged. Barefoot, with skin marked by life's harshness, and a gray sweater, worn and too large, that seemed to swallow her tiny body. Her small face was smudged with street dust, and her hair, tangled and unkempt, fell over her shoulders. Her deep, fearful eyes scanned the room, carrying a mixture of dread and despair. The diners paused their conversations. A lady near the window whispered to her companion, "What is she doing here?" A man with a striking blue tie muttered, almost inaudibly, "Who let her in?" But the girl didn't falter. Her bare feet made barely a sound on the marble floor as she advanced toward the counter, also made of marble, which reflected the light. Behind it, an older man in a tailored navy blue suit leaned in a discreet conversation with one of the attendants. His gray hair caught the glint of the chandeliers like silver threads. This was Arthur Caldwell, a legendary figure, known for his vast fortune, his undeniable power, and his rare ability to silence an entire room without uttering a single word. Arthur wasn't the kind of person children simply approached. But the girl, Elara, seemed to ignore this reality, or perhaps, in her profound need, she simply didn't care. She reached the counter and placed her trembling small hands on the edge. Her fingernails were brittle, and her palms calloused from countless nights spent on cold pavements. Her voice, almost a whisper, barely managed to break the silence. "Sir, I could help with the dishes in exchange for a plate of food?" Heavenly Flavors seemed to petrify. The subtle clinking of cutlery and glasses ceased. Even the soft melody emanating from the hidden speakers seemed to have vanished, swallowed by the tension. Arthur Caldwell slowly straightened, turning to face the small figure. His expression remained unchanged, impenetrable, but his eyes, gray like storm clouds, fixed on the child's face. Elara flinched under the intense gaze, but, surprisingly, did not retreat. In a corner, a group of guests began to whisper, "Who is that? She must have snuck in. Where's the manager?" Elara's stomach audibly rumbled, betraying her hunger. She bit her chapped lip, a blush of shame rising to her pale face as she tried to keep her voice steady. "I can also arrange the tables or sweep the floor. Please, anything. Just a little food, sir." Arthur remained silent. The attendant beside him cleared her throat, visibly nervous. "Shall I call security, Mr. Caldwell?" The magnate merely raised a hand, a subtle gesture, yet imbued with authority. No. A single word, uttered with icy smoothness that allowed no dispute. He observed Elara. The sweater, once gray, now faded, had holes at the elbows. Her thin legs were covered in dirt, but her posture, despite her fragility, was erect, and her eyes, frightened yet devoid of pleading, only expressed a silent and desperate need. Arthur recognized that look. He himself had carried it decades ago, long before the wealth, before the expensive suits, when he too begged for scraps in places that smelled exactly like this one. "Do you know who that is?" whispered one of his business associates, positioned discreetly behind him. "She's compromising the atmosphere," said another. "Arthur, let us handle this. You don't need to." He raised a finger, a sign that the discussion was over. Silence. Elara still waited, her hands trembling even more, but her feet remained firm on the ground. Arthur Caldwell let out a long sigh through his nose and rested both hands on the counter, leaning slightly. "What's your name?" She blinked, surprised by the unexpected question. "Ilara." "How old are you, Ilara?" "10," she whispered. "And where are your parents?" Her lips pressed together. She shook her head in denial. "I don't have any." The hall seemed to tilt slightly. Some customers stirred uncomfortably, looking away. Others stared openly, anxious for the influential man's reaction. Arthur tapped his finger on the marble, 1, 2, 3 times. Then he leaned towards Ilara again. "Ilara, why the insistence on working in the kitchen?" She frowned, perplexed. Because I have no way to pay, and I don't steal, so I thought," her voice faltered, "if I worked, maybe I could get some food." Arthur's throat tightened, an old memory resurfacing. He remembered being her age, standing before a bakery, stomach twisted with hunger, and hearing the cold phrase, "If you want bread, you'll have to earn it." But no one had allowed him to earn it. The attendant, noticing the change in atmosphere, whispered, "Do you want me to bring her something to eat, sir?" Arthur blinked, as if coming out of a trance. "What do I want?" he asked, more to himself. "Everything," he said, his voice loud and clear for all to hear. "Bring her a plate with a little bit of everything, and a glass of fresh milk." A collective sigh went through the tables, followed by a heavy silence. Arthur's voice became a firm bass, echoing through the hall. "This girl does not need to work in the kitchen to eat, not while I'm here." Ilara stared at him, eyes wide, a mixture of confusion and surprise. "But I said I would work." "You've worked enough, haven't you, child?" he interrupted, with an unexpected gentleness in his voice. Ilara's lower lip trembled. She nodded, a solitary tear rolling down. Arthur gestured to the attendant. "Prepare a table for her, the cleanest one, and bring a warm blanket from the stockroom, please." Voices in the restaurant rose in pitch, full of astonishment and indignation. Why is he helping a street girl? He must have gone mad. But Arthur Caldwell didn't care. For the first time in many years, the opinions of others in the room were completely irrelevant to him. He looked at Ilara and said softly, "Sit down, child. You will eat first. Then we will talk about what we will do." A stir spread among the guests as Arthur watched the girl, fragile, dirty, but with an innate dignity, hesitantly sit at the indicated corner table. A clean napkin and a glass of fresh milk were placed in front of her, but she touched nothing. Her restless eyes repeatedly looked towards the door, as if expecting to be expelled at any moment. Arthur's colleagues whispered, "This isn't your problem, Arthur. She must be an opportunist. Let her go before it turns into a scandal." But Arthur Caldwell remained motionless, his attention fixed on the girl. For years, he had built his empire brick by brick, from a hungry boy to the owner of grand buildings like that one. He owned everything money could buy, and yet looking at Ilara, at her thin, trembling fingers, he was transported back to the hunger that tormented him when he was 10 years old. He remembered hearing the cruel words, "If you want something, you'll have to earn it," and that no one ever had reached out to help him. Arthur moved away from the counter and walked slowly towards the table. Ilara looked up, startled, like a small cornered animal. "You don't have to eat fast," he said, his voice full of compassion. "Take your time. You are safe here." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "Why are you helping me?" He pulled out a chair and sat opposite her. "Because I know what it's like to be you," Arthur replied, his voice soft, hungry, alone, invisible to the world. Ilara shook her head, disbelieving. "But you are rich. You can't know." He smiled slightly, a melancholic smile. "Do you think I was born wearing this expensive suit?" She hesitated, without an answer. Arthur Caldwell's voice softened even more. "When I was your age, Ilara, I also begged for food in places like this. They wouldn't even let me in.
I slept in damp alleys, did odd jobs to survive. It took years until someone saw me as more than a burden. Ilara blinked, absorbing his words. I thought that if one day I achieved success, Arthur continued, his gaze lost in memories, I would ensure that no child would have to feel like I felt. And did you keep that promise? She asked, softly, with a thread of hope. Arthur looked at his own hands, as if they held the answers. No, I was too busy with my own journey. I forgot. The attendant brought plate after plate, a true feast. Warm, crusty bread, roasted chicken, bowls of steaming soup.
Ilara looked at the food as if it were the most precious jewels. Go ahead, Arthur encouraged. It's all for you. She picked up a piece of bread, held it for a moment as if to confirm its reality, and then took a bite. Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Arthur folded his hands on the table. Where did you used to sleep? At the old railway station, she murmured. My mother used to take me there before she stopped waking up. Arthur's chest tightened in silent pain. You've been alone ever since. She nodded. Why didn't you ask for help sooner, Ilara? They said no, she replied, her voice harsh, marked by experience. Or they told me to leave. Arthur felt the weight of those words, the cruelty of the world. As she ate with ravenous hunger, he picked up his cell phone. His driver answered immediately. Drive to the back entrance, Arthur said. We have a new guest. When she finished her meal, Ilara eyed him cautiously, her eyes still holding uncertainty. I'll clean up now, she said, as I promised. Arthur shook his head. You don't need to clean, Ilara. But I said, you owe me nothing, child. You needed help. That's enough. Why are you really doing this? She asked, curiosity overcoming fear. Arthur hesitated, searching for the right words. Because I should have done this a long time ago, he finally said, with palpable sincerity. And because no child should have to beg for food. When they stood up, the hall seemed divided into two realities. On one side, the magnate and the helpless girl, united by a gesture of pure kindness. On the other, a sea of shocked, incredulous faces. Arthur Caldwell didn't care about the stares or the whispers. He gently placed his hand on Ilara's shoulder. Would you allow me to take you to a safe place, Ilara? He asked. She stiffened, a subtle alarm on her face. Where to, sir? To my home. First, you'll have a room, food, new clothes. Then we'll decide together what to do next. Tears, this time of relief and hope, welled up in her eyes. Are you sure? She whispered. Arthur Caldwell's voice trembled slightly, heavy with emotion. I've never been so sure in my entire life. Years passed. Ilara was sitting at the same table at Celestial Flavors, but this time she wore clean, well-cared-for clothes. Her hair was combed and pulled behind her ears, and a school backpack rested elegantly at her feet. Arthur Caldwell stood before her, a smile of genuine pride lighting his face, while she, with bright eyes, animatedly recounted her first day of school, full of new discoveries and friendships. No one stared at her strangely anymore. No one whispered anymore. Because she was no longer a stranger, she was seen and loved. She was his daughter, in all that truly mattered. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more exciting, dramatic stories full of unexpected twists. And tell us in the comments, from what corner of the world are you watching? We love connecting with our community. Until next time, always be kind, feed your curiosity, and stay with us.